Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting. First order of business is the approval of the agenda. So I need a mover and seconder of the agenda unless there's someone that has to, needs to add to the agenda. Seeing none, moved by Mark, second by Jaguar. All in favor?
Sorry, I was muted. Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor Jaguar.
Yes.
Sean Southern.
Yes.
Joshua Curia. Oh, is he maybe not here yet? Justin Pennings.
Yes.
Mike Andrews.
Yes.
Warden Mennel.
Yes.
6-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, we have the minutes from September the 9th. Was there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, second over the minutes, please. Moved by Jaguar. Second. Marks. All in favor?
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor Jaguar.
Yeah.
Sean Southern.
Yes.
Justin Pennings.
Yes.
Mike Andrews.
Yes.
Warden Mennel.
Yes.
6-0, the motion is carried.
Next, we have the election of a chair. So, any nominations that wish to come forward for the chair? Dominic?
I will nominate Councillor Marks.
Okay. Nomination for Marks. Any other nominations? Seeing none, are you willing to stand, Tom?
I'd be pleased to.
Okay. So do we need to have a mover and seconder to accept the nomination? Okay. Now we need a mover and seconder to accept the nomination of Tom Marks for chairman of the Connectivity Committee.
I'll move.
Moved by Jaguar. Second. Who seconded?
I'll second it.
Was it Sean?
Yes.
Okay. Second by Sean Southern, all in favor?
Councillor Marks.
Yes.
Councillor Jaguar.
Yes.
Sean Southern.
Yes.
Justin Pennings.
Yes.
Mike Andrews.
Yes.
Warden Mennel.
Yes.
6-0, the motion is carried.
Is there any way we can get rid of the echo?
I've called. We're just waiting.
It looks like the echo is coming from Mike Andrews.
I'll mute.
Are we still have the echo? I don't think it's going through. Am I muted?
No, we're better. That's
Okay.
echo free.
All right, we're echo free now. So Tom, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Dave. Next item, I guess, is election of vice chair. So I'll open the floor to nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Dominique Jaguar.
have a nomination. Do we have a seconder?
Pennings will second.
That was Sean or Justin?
Justin.
Okay, Justin. Thank you. Do we have any other ones? Or would someone like to move nominations be closed?
I'll move nominations be closed.
Very good. Seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. I guess I should have asked you, but
I'll accept the nomination.
all right. Very good. So that item is over with. Item 5 is developing an action plan.
Councillor Marks?
We just need a recorded vote.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Counselor Marks,
Absolutely, yes.
Counselor Jiguer,
Yes.
Sean Southern,
Yes.
Justin Pennings,
Yes.
Mike Andrews,
Yes.
Gordon Mennel.
Yes.
6-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you for that. Now, item 5, developing an action plan, a facilitated discussion. I'm assuming Jennifer's going to step up.
Yes, yes.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. I had to unmute myself. Are you going to show us a slide deck as well at your end or no?
Yes, we're just bringing that up now.
Okay. Maybe while we're waiting, I don't know everybody on the screen. So could you do me, I know the council members, but can the other people introduce yourselves just so I have a sense of who's here? I'm going to start over with Al.
I am Al Rietzma, I'm manager of information technology for the County of Elgin.
Great, thanks. How about Alan? Oh, hi, Alan.
Hi, Jennifer. Alan Smith, General Manager, Economic Development. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Let's go to, is it Cecil?
Cecil, but that's okay.
Cecil, okay.
Manager of IT at Township of Malahide.
Yeah, great. Then Elgin County Finance, you're like incognito there.
That's right. Jim Bunchy, Director of Financial Services. Good to see you again, Jennifer.
Joshua.
You're muted, Joshua. There he goes.
Hi there. Joshua here is my name. Community member. I also have a business here in Elma. Happy to be here. Before the business, I worked a lot with sales and networking and connectivity. Most,
Great.
and I'm glad to be here.
Great, thank you. Justin.
Hi, Justin Pennings. I'm a counselor in Southfield, and I'm also a electrical and mechanical construction business owner.
Are other people having trouble hearing him?
Yes.
Sort of, you're faint and it's a little garbled.
Sorry about that. Is that a little better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a counselor in Southfield, and I've got a electrical mechanical business.
Yeah, we're still, there's a little garble at the end. Don't know if it's connectivity. Something we're going to talk about today. Oh. See how many examples we can have on our call today of challenges with connectivity.
I have 2 fiber lines to this room, so it should be good.
Oh, that's good. Mike, how about you?
Hi, Mike Andrews, lifelong resident of Elgin County and resident of Bayham, and almost a lifelong telecom professional. So my connectivity problem is I have a whopping 1.8 megabit DSL service here on Spreading, which is better than a lot of people in the country, but nonetheless a challenge.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Sean.
I'm Sean Southern. I'm a resident of Central Elgin, and I'm not in Central Elgin right now because my internet connection at home is only wireless and makes doing these pretty difficult. And right now I'm an independent IT consultant, and I'm the former manager of fiber services for Integris in St. Thomas, and I built their fiber network there.
Great, thanks. And then Tom, who do you have in the room with you there at the county?
Dominic.
Give us a panoramic view. Oh, I like that.
Yes. Dominiqu's beside me, and Julie beside her. Next, we've got Dave Mennel and Carolyn. Keep us in line.
And then we've got another incognito admin team too.
Catherine Thompson, Supervisor of Legislative Services at the county.
Great, thanks. So welcome this afternoon. We're going to do a couple of things. Oh, did you get the slide deck ready to go, Carolyn? There we go. So what we wanted to focus on this afternoon is building a bit of a work plan for the committee. I think this is your second meeting. You had an orientation at your first meeting. So now we want to dig into the topic a little bit and lay out some actions that you want to take as a committee. So you're going to see us go through sort of a couple of different conversations over the course of our time together. We're going to start by having a bit of discussion around what the challenges, issues, and barriers are around connectivity across Elgin County. So sort of helping us get that foundation of what's going on, what might we need to sort of look into as we think about connectivity. Then we're going to move into getting really clear on the purpose and goals of you as a committee. So thinking about why you've been brought together, what you'll accomplish over your time together. And then we're going to talk about sort of actions. What do you want to put in place to actually help you meet the goals that you have as a committee? And then we'll talk about sort of where you're headed in terms of next steps. So that's what we're going to focus on. So we're going to do, it's going to be a free flow conversation. So feel free to sort of jump in. If I can't see all of you. Let me see if I can see even a better way I can see all of you. That's a little better. And so just jump in, but we're going to start with the first topic, which is what are the challenges, barriers, and issues related to internet connectivity in Elgin? So tell me what some of them are. So let's sort of get a sense of what's going on in terms of connectivity right now. Who wants to start by giving us some of the challenges?
So Cecil, Malahide. In our particular location, we have a single ISP who provides broadband connectivity, wireline services. There are no outside companies unless you want to look at wireless companies, and in most cases, it's expensive wireless for low bandwidth or high charges for bandwidth usage. So if I had my way, if I had a wish, it would be to have more competition at the very least in this area. At least it might drive some more innovation and some more expansion.
Great. Other issues, challenges right now?
Well, I live down near the lake in Central Elgin, and I've got Execulink services there, and apparently I'm one of 2 people on Dexter Line that can actually get the service. So geography is a big issue for us out there, and trees as well. So for even getting wireless out there, getting it through the tree lines is incredibly difficult.
Great. So geography, so are you saying that it will be different depending on where you live across the county in terms of connectivity, as well as trees can be an issue in terms of getting the satellite signals?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. What are some of the other issues around connectivity?
There are just so many to choose from. I don't know where to begin in addition to what's already been said, but definitely the low density and so many residences or businesses being at sort of that last mile that doesn't make it conducive for private providers to make any profit.
Great.
Consistency. Some days you got it.
Say more about that. You mean it's not consistent in terms of like the signal you're getting? What do you mean by consistency?
Can just drop. You can be in the start of a meeting, it just disappears, and then panic.
Yeah, reliability.
Yeah, okay, great. What else? We've got single ISP provider, geography, trees, low density, last mile, consistency, reliability. What are some of the other challenges or barriers or issues with connectivity?
Cost can be a very big barrier as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of residents in my area using cellular connections, which are incredibly expensive. We had one business in the area they were spending over $2,000 a month for a cellular connection. And that's obviously not feasible for a home user to do. So we've got students at home because of COVID trying to do schoolwork, and they're on a cellular connection. It's just costing them a fortune.
So they're using this cellular connection because of the lack of availability?
Correct.
Okay. So that sort of goes to that last mile, lack of availability as well. Yeah. What are some of the other challenges or issues or barriers around internet connectivity that you either have experienced or have heard?
Jennifer, it's Jim Bunshoe. I had a call today with Trevor Telfer. He lives on Conservation Line. They're on DSL. He lives there with his wife and 5 children. And what they find is that each hour they lose internet connectivity for about 5 minutes numerous times, and then they have to reset their modem. When it is running, they're getting about 4 meg up, 1 down, but it's very unreliable. And they're just a short distance off of Highway 73 where there is a fiber line.
Great. So interesting. So again, that unreliability around the internet connection. Yeah. What else? Anything you've heard, anything you've experienced around internet connectivity?
From a personal example, we've got, I have Rogers fiber about 500 meters from my house, and the cost to connect to it was $250,000.
So cost to connect as well. Yeah. A little hefty to get the internet to your house.
Yeah, a little bit.
Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, part and parcel to single internet service providers in some of the areas of the county is actual lack of backbone services. Because as much as Malahide and Bayham and part of Central Elgin are served by a single independent provider, much of the rest of the county is too. Rogers is in some places, Bell is in some places, they're both in some places. But even for a third party provider to come in, if one could make an economic case for doing the rural areas of Elgin, which is a tough case to make, but there's no affordable backbone for that. The incumbents that have backbone facilities, the cost for third parties to connect to that backbone is astronomical, and again, just adds to the difficulty in making a business case for third party providers.
So I want to just make sure I'm understanding your language because I'm not a tech person. When you say backbone provider, tell me what you mean by that.
Well, you can look at broadband service in sort of 2 components, I guess. Primarily, there's last mile, which we've been talking about, and there's backbone. So last mile connects to backbone, which takes us out to the world, basically. And the backbone providers are the Bells and the Rogers. And in our case locally here, Eastlink is another one. They're the only backbone providers. They don't have backbone everywhere, but where they do have it, it's astronomically expensive.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. My 101. Other issues, challenges? Do you have the infrastructure in place, like across the county? No. Anyone else? Do you have like the infrastructure in place? Do you have the fiber in place to actually provide it?
I know from my own personal dealings with a few different municipalities, just like Mike was saying, there are places where there is backbone, but it's cost prohibitive. And I know Mike had a different challenge, and maybe even Sean when he was at Integris, but even as a lower tier municipality trying to access a Bell or a Rogers connection, even as a municipal entity, it was cost prohibitive and sparse. And in a lot of cases, it was kind of like a whack-a-mole. It's there, you could see it, you would engage the provider, and it's not here, it's not available. And it wasn't until you had a third-party specialist who knew how to work the system, talk to the right people, that lo and behold, one municipality, I won't mention who, it was 10 feet away from their office. But the entire time, the provider was saying that it wasn't available in the area. So part of it, I think, is a resistance by the big telcos to even share access. They want to make sure that they get their investment and then some.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, if you were starting to name something around those big providers not willing or sort of that resistance around sort of meeting some of the challenges. Yeah. Okay. Are there challenges, issues, barriers?
Can you switch view so we can?
Anyone else? No? Tom, did you want to say something? You're muted. I can see your mouth moving. There we go.
I was going to say the lack of cooperation in the industry. This affects us all, but we're being held for ransom, is how I feel.
So lack of cooperation in the industry, yeah. Other challenges?
I'll take what Tom said and maybe add to it. And again, this is just observational. It seems like generally upper tier governments keep trying the same methodology. Let's keep throwing money at the big telcos. They'll do it. They'll take care of it. Private industry will always, triumph. That hasn't been the case. We've been trying the same policies before even internet phone lines. The bells and such wouldn't go into rural areas, and it wasn't until certain governments realized that the private industry wasn't doing it that they took it upon themselves to do it, and that's when you've seen, expansion and access for rural people. The same programs that are still happening are the same concept. We'll just throw money at you, and you'll take care of it, and we keep getting the same result over and over.
So money's actually not getting what you want.
Well, not managed properly, in my opinion. We seem to be willing to give money to Bell and Rogers, who are very profitable companies on their own, to go a couple kilometers. And when they do it, it's, again, an astronomical price. We get very little return, I guess, for what we invest in through tax dollars.
Okay. Do you want me to recap and see if you think of anything else? So single ISP, geography, trees, low density, last mile, so the availability, consistency or reliability, cost to connect, lack of backbone provider, resistance to share access, lack of cooperation in the industry, little return for investment of tax dollars. Any other challenges, issues, barriers?
This is Justin. Is my mic coming through any better than it was earlier?
Yes, it's great.
Okay, good. I would reiterate what Cecil was saying earlier about the big telcos not being either knowledgeable or cooperative with kind of small potatoes hookups. I've had several people in my township, many people who actually had connectivity available, and they would call a call center somewhere, and Bell or Rogers would say, "No, sorry, it doesn't show up on my list," and they would leave it at that. And in fact, in my own front yard, there's a Rogers pedestal, and it took me about 8 years of calling them, and finally I had to send them a picture of their own pedestal in my front yard. They still said, "Yeah, we don't service your area." I told them I was a small business. They transferred me to a different department, and the next day I had 160 down at my house. So they were just completely unwilling.
Okay, I hear there's construction going on there at the county building.
Yes. Well, you between when speaking.
Thank you. So not knowledgeable, not cooperative, especially on hookups. That's what we just heard from Justin. Anything else, Joshua? Do you have something else you want to add in?
No, still listening in. But
Okay.
I think it's more poor connectivity when you go to even just out online. I have friends there that have really serious issues to have internet just to go to their homes. So it's just a connectivity still that is a very big issue, and probably lack of the competition it was already talked about, because that would push others to try to fight for the bucket that there is. I'm not sure if it's just about the size of the people, but also to try as much as possible to provide a better service, even if there are few people.
Great. So poor connectivity, lack of competition as well as we're thinking about issues, barriers, and challenges. Any other ones we've missed?
Jennifer, maybe one of the things we should think about is the level of service that we had back when we had AM Telecom and how that changed when it migrated to become Eastlink. And I'm wondering if anybody on the committee, I'm thinking maybe Mike Andrews in particular, might be able to speak to what, because as we go and we try and get new providers coming in and setting up perhaps or establishing these small service providers, what will their likelihood be of success, and will we be put into a situation where it just gets bought out by a big company again and then we're degraded back to poor service?
So Jim, are you alluding to the fact that there was better service before Eastlink?
I think personally, I think they were far more responsive back when they were AM Telecom. I imagined a lot of people would say the same.
Okay. And so you asked if Mike would talk about that?
I was just going to say I could add a story for Jim just to confirm it. So the Township of Malahide built a fire hall last year, and it's approximately the same distance from a fiber splice as a roads department. 8 years ago, when I put fiber in at the roads department, it was $8,000. That's when it was on telecom. Now with Eastlink, I went back to them to go the same distance, and it was actually fewer challenges. I didn't have to cross any roads, didn't have to bore anything. The same cost was now $35,000. When I asked them what the change was, they don't do it themselves. Telecom did everything in-house. They had the equipment, they had the expertise. Now it's all outsourced, and so they're at the mercy of the contractors.
Yeah, that's great.
I have to say, in my personal experience, what I've seen across, at least around southwestern Ontario, is that all the innovation and interesting work with fiber seems to be being done by the smaller telcos, like Gosfield Communications down in Cottam has been doing rural fiber for their customers for a number of years now. They were actually one of the first ISPs in Canada to have gigabit, and they work very closely with their different rural communities in their service area to connect them. Hay Communications, there's a whole bunch, I can't think of their names right now, but the smaller telcos seem to be much more responsive and much more flexible when dealing with these sorts of issues.
Great. Anyone else want to add into Jim's opening comment around the level of service changing between is it AM Telecom and Eastlink when it moved to Eastlink?
Yeah, that's right. Those are the two. And Al, maybe you can also talk a little bit about the money that we put into telecom to add fiber. And again, it kind of stresses that what we did back then to help get a small player in the game, we're now dealing with an unresponsive outside large company. So Al, do you want to talk about what we did back, was it 2005?
Yes, it was actually around 2003 with the Elgin Connects project. The county provided roughly $500,000 in incentives to Telecom in order to there was two parts of that project, running fiber to our 3 long-term care homes in our administration building, and then creating wireless towers in several areas of the municipalities. Frankly, the business model was only effective. Mr. Andrews will contradict me, but it was only effective because of the fiber portion of it. So that the fact that they were supplying high-speed internet to the county buildings, the infrastructure that was built for wireless at the time, the benchmark was 1.5 down, and 1.5 down, and can't remember what the upload speed was, but that infrastructure was not scalable. So what I mean was that by that is that as technology improved and common download speeds ramped up to 25 down, that technology that on the towers was very expensive to upgrade, to the point now where Eastlink is no longer providing wireless from those towers. I think the last customers were taken offline, or the service was canceled last year at some point. So the important part of that is that whatever technology gets put into place has to be scalable, because although we're aiming for 10 or 50 down and 10 up now, 5 years or even 2 years from now, that may not be the benchmark that we'll want to go with.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's trying to think what I'm going to call them. Sort of like criteria or guiding principles. So as you start to think about moving forward and building a plan, you made a key point, Al, that the technology you put in place needs to be scalable. Like, you don't want to put something in place it's going to age out very rapidly. So yeah, it's a great point. Other issues, challenges? Anyone else want to talk to that piece of it?
Could I make a comment there?
Yeah.
I get that part, that we want to look for the future, but we're in a pandemic, and the people that got two school kids trying to do their homework, and mom's working from home, etc. Is it not like buying your first house as a starter house? Certainly you want to upgrade from it, and you want something better down the road, or a used car. It's still doing the purpose. Is it better to get, like, my internet is good for my needs right now, knock on wood. I certainly couldn't run a business, and there's lots of room for improvement. But I'm grateful to have that, or I'd be running Tim Hortons all night long. So I don't want us to forget the opportunity to get something in place immediately, because it needed 6 months ago. I know that SWIFT board has taken a long time to get where they are today, because they wanted that perfect Cadillac for everyone. And I think if they're doing it over, because the service I have at home right now, people would scoff at it, but it's adequate. I'd welcome the day when it gets better. So I just want to throw that out there. I don't think we've got time to make it perfect.
So I'm hearing you say is that the short-term need is critical, especially now due to COVID, and working, schooling remotely, those aspects of what's going on.
And Jennifer, I will add that also, it just feels like nobody's representing the interests of the end user. So we all have stories, including our own personal stories, and those are like the calculating the impact it's having on all of our lives or businesses, and that's not, to me, the challenge is that it's not been part of the conversation. It's all about return on investment and big projects. So who's the voice, and is that part of the role of this committee eventually, to be the voice of the end user?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I wrote that down, but maybe keep that in mind. So as we think about your action plan, that could be one of the pieces that you put into it, is how do you actually begin to document the impact that this lack of internet connectivity is having on people who live in Elgin. Could be people who live in Elgin, could be your businesses. So think about maybe the different sort of audiences or end users. Yeah, great point.
One other roadblock can be, because the fastest technology to roll out is always wireless in these situations, but the availability and the cost of licensed spectrum is a big roadblock for those small wireless service providers as well. So a lot of them are using unlicensed spectrum, which can cause a lot of reliability issues.
Did you say spectrum?
Yeah, wireless spectrum. So the frequencies they use.
Okay, thank you. So lots of challenges, issues, barriers that you either know about, have heard about, or have experienced as we think about it. I wanted to start us off by grounding in those, because then it should lead us to what kind of actions you want to take as a committee. Because if you know those are the issues and challenges, how are you going to address them? What sort of actions are you going to take as a committee to help alleviate or minimize or get rid of, eliminate some of those challenges, barriers, and issues related to internet connectivity? Are there any others, just before we move on, I was going to ask if there were any other learnings you needed to document. So Jim and Al gave to me, it was a good learning. It was a story about something you've tried in the past and what sort of happened with it. Are there other learnings like that where you say, gosh, we've tried this, or our community has tried this, and this is sort of where it derailed? Because that can also help as we think about issues and challenges moving forward around internet connectivity. So anything like that where you sort of said, oh gosh, this is a lesson learned because this happened when we actually tried to do this.
If I may speak just as a lower tier representative, including the lower tier. In the past, I don't think it was always necessarily communicated from the county down, and I'm not slighting anybody, but I realize that they have a different picture to look at, different optics, whatever the case is. But some of the lower tiers, I think, if they were at least included at the time of the conversation, or at least had the right people included, might have had a little bit more input. It might have shaped it a little bit differently. I can't speak for myself, but Tommy or Dominique, for example, they know the people, they know where people live, they know where the real issues are. I think if those voices could have been maybe, included earlier at a higher level like it is right now, which I think is great. Some of these things might have been alleviated or potentially avoided in the past, but at least now we're on the right track, in my opinion.
Great. So again, when we think about actions, that's a great thing. I made a little note, is including lower tiers as part of that as well. Yeah. Other sort of lessons learned?
Jennifer, if I could just, from Central Elgin, this is Tom. I'm thinking of our 7 counselors, four of them have excellent internet. The other one is very capable. So there's only 2 or 3 of us that struggle. So it hasn't been an issue. Now, most of our staff have excellent. So it's Dennis Kravitz and I were the 2 that have been carrying this and sort of creating the awareness, because it's never been an issue in Central Elgin. But I think now we're getting people to realize it is, because there's a lot, and as soon as someone gets good internet, the problem goes away. It's not an issue. You forget about it.
That's good. Other stories, lessons learned of things that have been tried that didn't work the way you wanted them to?
I think one of the things that we've heard on the forums that we've participated in is the benefits of fiber versus the wireless. I think we heard it a fair bit today, but it's probably worth repeating. And that ultimately, if you take a look at it from a total investment perspective, you're better off with the fiber. And some of the municipalities that are pushing ahead, they're using the benefits of their access to low-cost debt to be able to push this further than ISPs alone would be able to do. And then from a meeting we had yesterday, there was other sources through the federal government of funding that could also be used to drive that to a solution of fiber that has that scalability that we need and the longevity of the technology compared to wireless.
Great. So I'm hearing benefits of fiber versus wireless. I also heard you talk a little bit about funding opportunities. So whether it be through the federal government or access to low cost of debt. So thinking about, again, moving to action or potential solutions. Yeah, that's great.
So if I could just add, kind of build on something that Tom said. Where I live, it's actually not that far from the county building, but I have decent internet only because I spend about $150 a month for satellite service. And I think that's not a lot of people can maybe afford that. And one of the things that has always concerned me about funding for a lot of these projects is they're based on maps of serviced areas, and a lot of times the maps are not granular enough, and therefore my house at the end of the road here is probably half a kilometer from or an area that's well serviced, but I'm in a cell in their cell, so they that cell is considered to be serviced, and so my area does not qualify for funding from a lot of these federal provincial funding models. So I've often said that the mapping needs to be a lot more granular in order to identify the areas that are under service. Because if you go with the maps that we have now, a lot of people could be left without the possibility of getting high-speed internet from as a result of funding.
Yeah, great. So even sort of the criteria around funding as well, what's being, how it's being determined whether or not a cell is being serviced. Yeah, great point.
Further to Al's point, if I might add, I know exactly what Al's talking about, and it is a mess. They have more recently released road segments, so they're getting a little bit more detailed, and it's better. The issue, of course, is it's still not perfect. I don't think you'll ever get perfect, but I would imagine probably similar to Al. I know people who, even on this road segment map where it says they should have a 5010 service, have nothing. They just happen to be 100 meters away, they or 50 meters away, or their house was built after the infrastructure was put in. I realize it's not perfect. It might be worthwhile looking at. I don't know if this would be a benefit in the future, but maybe a parcel by parcel or property by property survey, just to maybe determine for ourselves the actual coverage relative to what the broadband maps are telling us.
So one of the tools that's actually available right now is from CIRA, the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. They have a website where each resident can, it's kind of funny, you have to have access to internet to register your results, but you can run an internet speed test and it gets uploaded to a map, and you can, using that map, you could then demonstrate which areas are underserviced. And if you look at the map right now for Elgin County, there's only a couple areas that are serviced, and that's St. Thomas and Port Stanley. You have the odd spot here and there because there have been a number of people that have uploaded their speeds to this site. But if we could somehow use this tool, so get the majority of people in Elgin County to run this tool, we have a great idea of where the underserviced areas are.
That's great.
Jennifer, add to that, this is another example of where we could have engaged the end user from the beginning.
Yes.
Have everybody register their own speed and not rely on data provided by providers whose interests are not the same as the end user. So that's very easy. I think everybody would be quite happy to report how poor their internet is. And that's so easily done in terms of citizen science and all of that. So why isn't the end user part of this?
Great. I'm going to move us on to just take a look at the next slide. I can get you to pull it up. Whoever's running it is Catherine. Are you running the slide deck? So yeah, thank you. So purpose and goals. So thinking about why are you here? Why is there a connectivity committee? So the County of Elgin has a new strategic plan, and one of their strategic priorities is called Growing Elgin. And within that, there's an objective around enhancing quality of place. And that includes looking at access to reliable, affordable internet. So thinking strategically, certainly the county as a municipality or an upper tier municipality has identified this as a strategic focus for them over the next couple of years. And then you also have a terms of reference for the committee. So this is your job. So your job is to develop a program to help solve all those challenges that we just named. So what do we need to put in place to actually begin to alleviate or minimize some of those challenges? Here we're going to speak to Dominique's piece, facilitate and enable stakeholder engagement and consultation sessions. So who else do you need to hear from as you think about developing sort of a plan or a strategy around connectivity? Work in collaboration with staff and county council to develop some possible solutions and programs around enhanced connectivity, and then to develop a plan for implementing the goals and directions recommended by the committee, including metrics, so how will you know if it's successful, and the deliverables, so what will actually be put in place. So if we think about what you have been put in place to do. Those are the key things. So engaging, developing a plan or a program, facilitating and enabling stakeholders to sort of have a voice in the process, develop some possible solutions and programs, and also then look at metrics and deliverables. Those are the key things that we're looking for from you as a committee. So as we think about that, I'm going to actually move to the how can we meet our goals slide, which is a couple down, one more, and get you thinking about if those are your goal, is sort of your direction or tasks as a committee. Let's think about what that looks like in terms of an action plan. So I'm actually going to, maybe can you stop screen sharing so that we can pull everybody up? So this is where we want to get some ideas from you around what steps you want to take as a committee. So what actions will you take to be able to develop a plan and some possible solutions around connectivity? I've heard a couple of ideas already. So certainly the suggestion from Dominique around engaging end users. So is there an opportunity to do that? So a couple of things she mentioned were the stories around the impact. Then we had, I think it was Al, you talked about that tool, right? The internet speed test tool, where again, you could engage users to get a sense from them, a sort of a mapping of connectivity. So let's sort of start with ideas. If you think about an action plan for you as a group, how are you going to get from today, which is we've got a list of challenges, issues, concerns, barriers around connectivity. How are you going to get from today to developing a plan with some possible sort of solutions and programs to enhance connectivity? What do you think some of your steps should be as a group?
If I may tap Sean said he has worked with a company or is aware of a company that has provided broadband or fiber optics to rural communities. That might be a company worth investing and talking to. Mike Andrews, the Packetworks or Northern Frontenac might be another individual. They've already done this. I think other communities even, there must be other communities out there that have done this exact project or this sort of scope that have encountered some of the challenges already and might have a pitfalls to avoid for us.
Right. There's an organization called the Independent Telecom. I'm looking at it. Independent Telecommunications Providers Association, and North Frontenac is part of it. So is Bruce Telecom, Gosfield, Execulink, Hay Communications, all the smaller ones, and they tend to be doing some really innovative things. So that might be, we should reach out to them, and we can just reach out to that group and maybe get lessons learned and find out from one of these organizations what worked for them, what helped them make the business case to build rural fiber, and see what we can do to assist. It may not be these telcos that we work with, because there's our own local ones that we can work with, but we can find out from these guys what they've done that made the business case for them work.
Yeah. So this is my technical term. I call it an environmental scan. So you're going to identify where it's already happening. So it could be communities where they've already identified some solutions. What have they learned about it? The other piece then was talking to companies that have helped to provide solutions. So Sean suggested the Independent Telecommunications Providers Group. Ask them a little bit about what's worked for them. How did they build a business case around building rural fiber? Yeah, great. Other ideas of things that would help you as you had to build a plan around enhancing connectivity? Do you want to add in, so I'm going to go back to Dominique, do you want to add in, is there a piece around who are the stakeholders you maybe want to engage? So if we had like environmental scan might be one of your big things you do. If you then have sort of an engagement piece of your plan, who would be those stakeholders that you would want to talk to as part of engagement?
Yeah, and I think an end user could be anyone who needs a connection, whether you're a business or a homeowner, or, and trying to document. And I don't know if in the survey where people can tell us, because we already have a lot of stories just between members of this committee. but wondering if we had a full inventory of people telling us, this is how much I spend, this is the speed that I get, and this is what I really need. And perhaps the impact, asking those 4 questions to have a really good inventory, a little bit more quantified than our anecdotal stories.
Great. So document stories from the end users. So to include how much I spend, what's my speed, what I need, and what's the impact on me or on my household or my business. Great. Are there other stakeholders that you want to talk to as you start to think about building a plan other than the end user?
Jennifer, it's Tom. I think at our last meeting, it might have been Mike mentioned the fact that it's a lot cheaper to hang fiber from a hydro pole than it is to bury it. But there's an obstacle called Ontario Hydro. And I bet that's not common knowledge. I bet if we went to Jeff Urick and mentioned that, he may be surprised to hear that. Perhaps it could be the politicians in the room's job to bring that to their attention, because this should be a team effort. And I walk down Ferguson Line every day and I'm starting to notice all these hydro poles. It wouldn't take long to string a cable along them. Maybe it's not that simple, but I think we need more cooperation from other stakeholders, such as the energy companies.
Yeah. Hydro One actually has their own telecom business. They have a great deal of fiber across Ontario. They were actually, when I was with Integris, that was one of our main suppliers, was Hydro One Telecom. Now, that said, I also have tried to use Hydro One poles. If they're newer, and having worked for an electric utility for 15 years, poles can be very cheap to go on if they're in good shape. If they're not, based on Reg 2204, the cost of the work that can be done to make poles ready to have fiber put on them can be cheaper to go underground if the poles are not in good shape. But that's part of the business case. But yeah, I agree that having and any infrastructure owner really could be part of the discussion to find out, are they going to be digging somewhere anyways? Is Hydro One putting in where are they going to be replacing poles? Is Union Gas doing any gas line replacements or any new gas line anywhere, things like that? If you're opening up the ground, or putting in new poles, stuff like that, that's typically when it's cheapest to put in additional infrastructure.
That can also apply to when we're building roads, our own engineering department.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a second group, which was more about sort of potential partners, especially around infrastructure. So whether it's Hydro One, Union Gas, could be the county engineers or lower tier, but sort of looking at are there opportunities to leverage the work that they're going to be doing in terms of infrastructure? So those types of partners. Yeah. Sorry, someone else wanted to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment on Councillor Marks and Sean's comments, because I can put that into really clear perspective. I have just within the last 2 weeks, I've worked with a couple of contractors and have concrete numbers just to kind of put this aerial versus underground in perspective. And as a rule of thumb, the contractors that I'm familiar with they can do aerial plant from end to end almost, and the only thing that this excludes is electronics for about $19,000 a kilometer. So that's $19,000 a kilometer. For directional drilling, it's $95,000 a kilometer all in, and that just kind of puts that whole thing in perspective. So there's absolutely a role for support structure owners, whether it's Hydro One or local LDCs, et cetera, to play a role there. But it is still a challenge, and Sean has drawn those pretty plainly. If it's old plant, putting fiber on poles not necessarily the most economical way of going about it. But the other thing that really caught my attention that Councillor Marks has just mentioned is the county itself. I've lobbied numerous municipalities for this over the years about if roads are being opened up, that's the time to put pipe in the ground, pipe across, especially road crossings for telecom construction or service providers. That's the most expensive element of getting fiber in the ground, the road crossings. So when intersections are opened up or sewer water work is being done, that's the time to get conduit in the ground. And I've looked at that. I don't think anybody's doing it much, mind you. There might be, actually, I should take that back because I think I can think of one municipality that has done this. But if the county were to provide to as part of their general contracts when road work is being done, put conduit in the ground as part of that general contract at the time, and whether it is county-owned infrastructure that goes in that conduit or it's just space leased out to service providers, that's one way to incent any provider. It might even be big providers, although I'm not sure Bell Canada would rent conduit from the county of Elgin, but that's the kind of innovative stuff that really needs to be happening that just isn't. I know everybody goes down the street and sees it under construction last year, and then next year Union Gas comes along the street and opens it all back up, and then a year later somebody else, and people see that, and it infuriates people, but there just isn't that no one takes responsibility, I guess, and it has to be, in my opinion, the county in our case to shepherd that along and ensure that take those opportunities when they come, because those road allowances, as the county guys will say, or will confirm, they're getting tight. There's not a lot of space for providers to go back into those rights of way. So that's an excellent comment that you made, Councillor Marks, about getting pipe in the ground when roads are under construction. Just a final comment on the Union Gas thing. You'll never get a gas company in this country to agree to put anybody's infrastructure in at the same time as theirs. They'll cite safety concerns over and over, so that won't happen. Actually, water is similar to that. It's very difficult to get them to realize that putting a pipe in the ground when their water lines are going in is a good thing for everybody, and it truly is. It's very rare that something has to be dug up when it's once it's placed, especially if it's in conduit. A bit rambling, but anyway, just wanted to make that point.
Good underlining of some of those potential partners.
Jennifer?
So guys, yeah, go ahead.
But then I guess the natural extension is that we should be contacting all our lower tiers and following suit. And that knowledge, I have to give credit to Duncan McPhail, because he's the one that come up with this. And I asked this of Barry Field from Swift, and he agreed. And I said, well, then why isn't Swift broadcasting this across all their municipalities? Because think of the impact it could have in 2 years.
So I'm under a section I'm calling engaged stakeholders. So we've got end users that could be engaged. We've got potential infrastructure partners being engaged. We also talked about lower tiers and engaging them in the discussion around connectivity as well. Are there other groups or stakeholders that you think should be engaged, that you want to hear from as you think about developing a plan or solutions?
I think one very timely one to talk about is the Thames Valley District School Board and London Catholic School Board. I actually have coincidentally, my daughter's a high school teacher who is teaching the online program in the wild, or from the wilds of Malahide Township, and her son is also at home doing online learning, and they have growing connectivity challenges for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. So again, going back to what's the impact, especially right now in the era of COVID, school boards for sure would have I think a good perspective around what's happening. Yep. Another stakeholder. Any other stakeholders you want to hear from?
I was thinking about the current providers, because some of them have long-standing contracts that no other third party would come in the area where they're providing internet. So this would help us in the long-term plan where to execute first and how long those other communities are going to wait until those contracts are being run over.
Yeah, great. So current providers, getting a sense from them, because they'll probably have a good list of challenges and issues they have and what their experience is in terms of what they're able or not able to do. So I got 5 groups: end users, potential infrastructure partners, your lower tiers, the school boards, current providers. Any other groups you want to talk to? Julie.
A couple other thoughts. I think perhaps we should consider expanding lower tiers to include neighboring municipalities as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Additionally, I think it has been important that we ensure that our approach, this committee's approach, dovetails or at least doesn't duplicate the SWIFT initiative. So maybe there's a SWIFT component here worth acknowledging that they're a key stakeholder. And I think that's the extent of the stakeholders I've had on my list. So.
Okay. So now we've got the end users, potential infrastructure partners, lower tiers and neighboring municipalities, school boards, current providers, and SWIFT. The sort of stakeholders you'd want to engage or have some discussions with as you think about developing a plan. Have we missed any other groups or people you want to talk to?
I just have one more quick comment about why I think neighboring municipalities is an important stakeholder here, and that is the fiber in the ground while county roads are under construction. I think is an initiative that's been underway in Chatham-Kent, and they're very close to us, and we could perhaps tap into their resources and find out what is the cost per kilometer and learn from what they've been doing there. So,
yeah, great. Other stakeholders? Have we captured them all? So let me ask you this before I move off this part of the plan. In what way do you want to engage your stakeholders? Because that's going to be part of the work, right? So if we think of end users, Dominique talked about documenting their stories. How do you want to do that? How would you do it? Is it a survey? Is it focus groups? Like, how are you? Dominique's nodding. Are you nodding at survey? Survey?
I think survey is a good starting point. It won't capture everybody. I think community forums possibly, which I know is incredibly difficult right now with COVID, but similar to what we're doing right now. I know not everybody has the ability to connect with a broadband connection to do this, but some of the municipalities, mine included, are starting to slowly open back up for public meetings. There's no reason why we couldn't potentially have people who can't do an online survey be able to come in and just talk and share.
So end users, I mean, an online survey, potentially community forums, maybe on a smaller scale. Yeah, Dominique?
But even a paper survey, because of the issues we're talking about. So if we make those available where even some of the retail stores or even some of the public spaces I know are not open, but some of the places where we know our residents are going. And if they could drop that off, good old paper.
You could also ask, I mean, going back to whoever brought up school boards, I think it was Mike, asking if they've documented any impact or what they've collected in terms of data around connectivity, because I'm assuming they will have, because they'll know how many pieces of technology they're sending out and whether people are able to use it or what's happening in terms of online and remote learning. So they may be able to provide you with a perspective around that, and or they may be willing to actually send surveys home with kids so that you could have households do surveys that way as well, sort of thinking about how you might distribute it to get a wider sort of catch at people. So that are your end users. So what about your potential infrastructure partners? How do you see engaging with that group? Is that like a one-on-one conversation? Do you see like interviews? Do you see bringing them together as a group and talking about it? How would you want to approach that one? So that's like your Hydro One, your Union Gas, County. Any ideas?
Should that be a formal letter from the warden, like start to engage with them?
What do people think? A letter? Start with a letter? Alan, you're nodding.
The group that Sean mentioned might be a good idea too. You said they were independent group committee. Start with them. They've worked with the big boys. They do it themselves. So maybe just put some feelers out.
So potentially a letter and then feelers with the independent telecommunication providers?
Coincidentally, I'm a life member of that organization, which I don't know whether it gives us an in or not, but
Ah,
It's a pretty diverse group, and I'm not suggesting they shouldn't be engaged, but it's a pretty diverse group. You have family-owned businesses, you have cooperatives, you have common share type companies in that group, and you actually have some municipally-owned companies like Bruce Telecom. So they're very diverse within themselves, and I think you get quite a diversity of opinion and experience with them as well, but certainly. And actually, incidentally, going back to a much earlier conversation, some of the differences that you've seen between what Telecom was and what Eastlink now is. Telecom was a pretty key member of that club at one time, and they're born out of a group of incumbent small telephone companies in rural areas, primarily, that Bell Canada either had no interest in serving or was late in serving, and so the local doctors and merchants, etc., built their own telephone companies, and they were born in that kind of an environment. So they're a pretty broad-based, diverse group. I know the executive director of that organization quite well. He's a personal friend, so I can make that overture to that group to see what kind of interest there would be in either meeting with the committee or having some kind of engagement with the committee.
great. So lower tiers in neighboring municipalities, let's go back to what do you want to know from them? Because then I'm going to ask you how you're going to collect it. Oh, I'm going to go, Julie. Are you looking at Julie? Lower tiers in neighboring municipalities. So if you're going to engage them, why are you engaging them? What do you want to know from them? How are they going to help you with your plan?
For me, speaking from a lower tier perspective, where's the service? What's lacking? What point you in where are things not good? I know you have a sort of a general overview of the county, but there might be some just that specific areas that could be targeted. What's there? What are we doing? What are the municipalities themselves doing? Is there an opportunity possibly that if there is a cooperative, as an example, or some sort of countywide, broadband, maybe those municipalities become partners of that as opposed to grabbing our own service that we currently have.
Great. Challenges, what are they doing? Are there opportunities for sort of working together, cooperation?
I'd like to find out what they've done well and what they failed at, so we don't copy the success, but not the failure.
So their learnings, lessons learned, good and bad. Other things you want to know, lower tiers, neighboring municipalities? I'm asking you this because I've got a little template in my head that I think we're going to bring back to you, which would be, here's the stakeholder group, here's what we want to know, here's the method we're going to do. So whether it's a survey, it's a meeting, blah, blah, so that you start to see how the engagement strategy will work. Dominic.
Yeah, I would add, and not only to the lower tiers, but also to all parts, what are they willing to contribute? What is an asset that they can bring to the table, whether it's knowledge, infrastructure, money, technical expertise? What can you contribute to the solution?
Great. Great. So how would you like to approach lower tiers in neighboring municipalities? Now that you sort of know what you want from them, is it an interview? Is it bringing them together all together? How would you see sort of approaching that?
Okay, well, I guess I'll speak unless Dave or Dominique wants to speak to it. A mayor and or deputy mayor sits from every lower tier municipality on county council. So there's already representation there. I don't know how much of a connection there is between them and administration when it comes to this information, but maybe having the mayors or deputy mayors engage the administration. Myself, I mean, I represent 4 lower tier municipalities. I know I have some knowledge, I have some ideas. I'm just one component, but I can't speak on behalf of 3 of the 4, at least. I just do IT for them. So as for neighboring municipalities, I think it's going to have to be warden to warden, or at least like an Al Reitsma to, another IT manager at another county to see what's happening there.
Okay. Other thoughts on that?
Maybe I'll add that even though obviously you can reach out individually, but I think my preference would be to bring them together so that we start de-siloing the information and the sharing of information. So they could learn from each other potentially as well. So we can model that coordination.
Yeah, they're working together. Yeah. So school boards was your next one. I heard you say you want to find out sort of what they've learned around connectivity or their experience has been, any stats they've collected, any stories of impact, anything else that would help you from the school boards as you think about building your plan?
I know from some of the people I've spoken to at the school board, some of these schools are in communities and they actually have fiber optic going to their building. So the residents may not have it, but some of the schools themselves do. So that might be I guess, an access point, for lack of a better description, for service.
Mm. So school connectivity, yeah. Julie?
I was just going to comment that at the beginning of the pandemic and throughout the pandemic, we have established a relationship with Thames Valley to work on connectivity issues by enhancing our access points through our public libraries. So we have established that relationship. And so I'm not sure a letter or anything like that is necessary, but we could certainly start asking for the data and information that they are collecting, because I know they have some solid data to support the number of students and families who do not have internet. And then they've taken some steps to resolve those issues. So Jim and I could just request some additional information as a next step.
Yeah, great. What do you want to know? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Can I just loop back to the residents and what we want to know? I think I would include the notion of what are you willing to contribute to the solution. I would include that question to the end user as well, because there are many stories of residents who even have come to me and said, I would pay almost anything to have a tower. I'll give you my backyard. Just come build a tower and all my neighbors were going to get together. So they're willing to contribute money. They're willing to contribute land. And I think we may be missing out on what the residents and business owners are actually willing to contribute to the solution. We need to know.
Yeah, that's a great point. The current internet providers right now. So I heard, I'm going to write them down. Rogers, Bell, and Eastlink, are those the three that you have? What do you want to know from them?
They have in trying to extend internet connectivity to the rural areas. And some of the complaints that we mostly have from the end users in terms of connectivity, if they can share with us, it will be very helpful for us even to start with, as the information being collected from end users, and also the cost involved in their opinion. What are they ever done a cost analysis to do that kind of work, which would also help us how to inform the same process as if we have to do.
Great, thanks. Other ideas? What do you want to know from those three providers? I think it goes back to like, what are you willing to do? Could be another question for them. Other ones? Jim?
I think with the ISPs, a couple of things. One, there's the big providers, the ones that you listed, but there's also all the small providers that we need to engage.
Yes.
And in terms of what we're asking them, it's what do they need to achieve that last mile, either in terms of upfront support or ongoing support. I think what the committee is going to have to get its head around and then ultimately council decide upon is what role does the county play? Because I think that you have different alternatives. It can be simply we put out letters for proposal, and we just let the cards fall where they may, taking whatever money we can get from the feds and the province to help support it. But otherwise, we let it run very self-sufficiently. Then it would be where we're contributing with financial support to top up what's being provided by upper tier levels of government. And then it could also be further to the point where back in the old days, you had municipalities that were taking on the role of hydro provider, telephone provider. And that certainly is a possibility today as well, is that it could be to the extreme of the county becoming a fiber provider, or as Mike Andrews suggested, even to the extent of just providing the conduits under the road. That could be a role we play as well. So there's so many different degrees that we can be involved in, and it's going to change what the end solution is going to be and how far into that last mile we're actually able to achieve.
If I can add to that, I would say that the role of the county, of the municipalities, can emerge out of that inventory of what we know, that what is everybody willing to contribute and what's the gap? So what's missing?
Yeah.
And then that's where we can decide rather than the other way around. So I know there's a bit of chicken and egg, but not impossible to tackle. But I could see that, let's find out what contribution is missing.
Yeah, so I'll write that down actually as another action step beyond the engagement, which is identify the role of the county. So sort of what you said, it's like what's missing. So now we've talked to everybody, we've looked at sort of what's possible, what people are willing to contribute or not. I'm also going to add, I think there's another action step around exploring or identifying funding opportunities as well. And then sort of the end of the day, you sort of look at what's the role of the county in terms of moving forward. Can I ask the current internet providers, would those be interviews, like one-on-one interviews with them? How would you want to approach learning things from them? Throw them all in a room together and hear what they have to say.
Speaking from the industry side, I think we would be hard pressed to, and I just lost my connection almost. I think we'd be hard pressed to get Bell and Rogers and Eastlink to start with in a room and have them discuss with us what they do, which we need to know, right? What their plans are, what their business model looks like, where the shortfalls are. I think that's not ever going to happen. And even with the smaller ones, I think it would be easier with them. I think you could, if you dangled a carrot, the smaller service providers probably would come into the same room and divulge some of that. But I think it's almost impossible that you could engage the three major carriers in the county in a situation like that. I think it would have to be one-on-one.
Great. Thank you. Good input. What about Swift? What do you want to know from them?
Well, I'll go on record. Swift is a much improved organization than a couple of years ago, and I have a lot of confidence in Barry Field. So I would urge a lot of cooperation. Barry has stated in meetings more than once that we're all better off if we work together, and I really believe that. And so, from information, I certainly want to be closely connected and work with them.
Great. So what do we want to know from them for talking to them? What will help you develop your plan?
Probably gaps, like, if Aylmer is well served, that's, you eliminate that from the county map. And Bob Purcell has mentioned that there's not a lot of people complaining up there because they've went on their own. But certainly get a lot of squabble from me from Central Elgin and Malahide and Southwold. Justin, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for improvement. So the far end, West Elgin, and that's where we need the lower tiers to say what they need, because the county's a pretty big animal and parts of it are really good. So we're going to have to be communicating with everyone.
Great. So gaps. What else do you want to know from SWIFT?
What's their current plan of attack? I'm not aware of it. I don't know what details, and they don't necessarily need to share it with me, but I wouldn't want to duplicate. I'd like to be able to enhance. If they have, 25% of the plan in place, can we help with the additional 75% of the plan?
Great. So current plan of attack, do you also want to know from them, and sort of you're saying, Cecil, are there challenges on their end as well in terms of moving forward?
Or more or less, where are they at the moment? How far are they? What's their ultimate goal? I mean, in stages, of course. I realize ultimately it's to service everybody, but there's an RFP out now. I can't remember how much it's for, 6 million or something like that. What's that covering? Who's it going to? What's the plan of attack? What stage 2? Is there a stage 2? Is there a stage 3? Just basically, where are they looking at going, and can we assist them to get there?
Just another thought. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
To build on what Cecil mentioned, I think SWIFT has gathered a ton of information about Elgin County that we'd love to tap into. So I think it's important for the committee to gather information from school board, from SWIFT, from whoever has collected data, and compile it, and then use that to identify the gaps in the information and metrics that we have on our own community. So.
Yeah, so that's actually, I'm going to merge that as its own little step. So data gathering. So what data is already out there that can help inform you as you start to think about sort of plans and possible strategies? And I've heard, as we've talked through, there are different stakeholders that sort of emerged. So the school board certainly came out around that. SWIFT came out around that. It could be your current providers may have data as well. So then,
I know I didn't mention this earlier, but other organizations like OMAFRA, farmers, anything like that, they have their own communities, their own groups, they know their own challenges, but what of those groups are in our area? What information do they have to offer?
Great. Yeah, that's a good point. So it could be other groups.
Jennifer,
data gathering. Yep, go ahead.
I'm wondering, so Chamber of Commerce, they probably have data from their members, and I'm wondering about, I'm thinking out loud, but the healthcare sector. So even retirement home and
public health.
Public health.
Yeah.
What their gaps are, and connecting even just medical offices to residents.
Great.
Perhaps they've collected data.
So let me sort of recap what I've got so far. I've got conduct an environmental scan. So that's where you're going to talk to other communities that have already done this. What are their learnings? Who did they work with? All those kinds of things. You're going to talk to the independent telecommunication providers to get a sense from them around access in rural areas and the innovation that they've been undertaking. That piece, the environmental scan, could also include sort of looking out at literature. What's literature telling us around innovation that's happening in terms of rural internet or connectivity solutions? Then I've got a data gathering phase, so existing data that already exists that you just sort of want to compile and will help you take a look at. We've got a big action around engaging your stakeholders, so huge engagement plan. And then I've got explore, identify funding opportunities is another potential step for you. So where is there funding, if at all, and or what are the opportunities as you look internally? So I think as Jim talked about earlier, could it be access to low cost debt? So just sort of exploring sort of the financial or funding side of it as well. So as we look at that step, what do you know, like where should we be looking for looking at funding opportunities around connectivity?
Somebody mentioned federal programs. I wasn't too sure about those, but I know the province has the ICON program on right now. They've already accepted submissions on the first round. The second round is the end of the year, if I recall. I'm not too sure. Maybe the county members might have some more input there.
Feds, the Prime Minister, the Governor General in the throne speech yesterday alluded to the as yet unconfirmed, undetailed broadband fund, which I would expect we will see before too many months out, and I think that could be a significant source of funding. This is another area that I've thought about for many years. Nothing too successful at this point in time, but in my past experiences. But Infrastructure Ontario is an avenue open to municipalities, and now that's borrowing. That's not grant money. That's borrowing. But there are, again, going back to the smaller players, there are smaller players that would probably be much more interested in serving places like Elgin County if they had access to capital at the same cost that the county or a lower tier could get it through Infrastructure Ontario. And I know we have my current employer has had direct discussions with Infrastructure Ontario, and they're quite amenable to funding broadband, but again, that's not capital that's available to a private corporation. That would be available for the municipality. So that the county acting as a funder, but on the basis of borrowing through Infrastructure Ontario, I think is something that this committee would want to take a real serious look at. Good.
Other ideas for funding sources?
Before I leave that, there's actually also the Federal Investment Bank, but they like big numbers. If you have $100 million project, they'll talk to you. If you have a $10 million project, they don't seem to be terribly interested. Although that could be different if it was approached from the perspective of a county or a municipal entity as opposed to a private corporation.
Other things to explore? Other funding sources you're aware of should be looked at?
So should we not?
The CRTC also manages a broadband fund, although they open that in Wave. They've just closed the most recent phase of that. So there's nothing there today, but that will continue to recur. It's not a lot of money either, mind you, but it is another avenue for funding for broadband.
Sorry, I missed when you said the name at the beginning. What was it?
It's the CRTC.
Okay.
It's the money they used to use to subsidize local phone services is now being diverted into funding broadband.
Okay, thank you. Dominique.
Yeah, I was going to say, should we not reach out to our MP and MPP who can reach out to their colleagues so that they can provide an inventory of all of the different funding sources, because they are coming from different ministries. It's not just infrastructure, it's not just telecom. Because it affects healthcare, education, and so there are different pockets. And rather than us again duplicating their staff, or they might already know all of the different sources.
They would be very interested in that, because if they could stand and say that Elgin County is fully connected, they're going to be taking bows. So they're very interested. If we come up with a plan, they're going to be very interested. So absolutely contact them.
Great. So that would be a good starting point around that one. So let me ask you, are there other actions you want in your plan that would help get you ready to actually develop a plan of potential solutions? So you're going to do some data, do some data gathering. So existing data, what's out there. You're going to do an environmental scan where you're going to talk to other communities, look to your independent telecommunication providers and their learnings. You're going to engage with stakeholders, a whole bunch of them. You're going to explore, identify funding opportunities. I've got identify the role of the county at some point in time, but is there other information or things that would help you create a plan around potential solutions to enhance connectivity? It's like, what else do you need as a committee to sort of sit down and be able to generate a plan? What would be helpful?
Maybe my question is more to the committee. I know at our last meeting, I pointed out the need potentially for a two-tier solution, one that would recognize the emergency, because we're going to be facing this and working remotely and all of that for the next year, and what is shaping up through our discussions now is not an emergency response. It's a solid long-term, which I'm totally in favor. But I'm wondering if the committee is interested in exploring sort of a two-tier action plan, one that would have Band-Aid solutions, recognized as Band-Aid solutions, but to address immediate need while we do all the good work that you started listing and we started identifying. So just wondering if that is something the committee would consider.
Great question. So do you take sort of a parallel approach, one being a lot quicker, looking at responding to sort of the emergency condition or situation we're in right now, as well as continuing on and sort of planning for a longer term, more sustainable solution? What do people think?
I'm certainly in favor of that. I view it like the starter house. We need to get basic coverage to everyone. The improvement can always come, but then that takes the emergency away, get the school kids going and stuff like that. But they desperately need it. If you don't have it for a day or two, you're just, the temper rises.
Don't have.
Other thoughts? What do people think? Yeah, Cecil?
Just something I've always thought about, and it's been on my mind for 15 or 20 years. And it might accomplish this. And again, I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but we know wireless is not the perfect solution, but it is a quick solution. I could foresee us building not extensive infrastructure, but enough infrastructure to get good coverage. Keeping in mind, or at least the way I'd love to see it, is could it be utilized for something afterward, like an emergency backup network? The fiber gets severed, it gets cut. We could, put up point-to-point wireless links. It could be a county-owned one, emergency management operated network that could be there in case of a fiber cut, a power outage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We could approach our fire departments. Could they use a radio bases for their radios, CB radios for communications? I know we have a couple spotty areas in Malahide, specifically Port Bruce, and if you can kill two birds with one stone, there might be additional funding there because it's emergency management, not communications, like you alluded to earlier with different departments. And by doing so, if we end up having an emergency network, we have our fiber in place, there's still a place for third-party wireless ISPs to provide service on there. If we keep that in mind, we don't want the direct competition, obviously, but it would encourage competition. It would actually maybe keep prices in check, as opposed to having one or two ISPs dictating the price and the speeds in their area. So we're not working against them, we're working with them, but we're obviously keeping our own interest in place. I don't know, that's just a thought I've had, but.
What do people think? Yes, Mike?
I think it should be on the table for sure. And I've always looked at wireless as, and I think that's been echoed by a couple others at the table, that it's kind of a stopgap solution. It isn't the end solution, and it's a solution that quickly becomes outdated. And I know everyone listens to all the talk about 5G with cellular services right now, and the vast majority of the public have no idea what 5G means, but it's pretty simple. It means fifth generation. So in my short lifetime, when cellular services first started to come to fruition, which I can't remember what year that was, but the large network operators have rebuilt that network completely, with the exception of a few towers standing, 5 times. This is the 5th time in less than a generation that network has entirely been rebuilt because it's gone obsolete and it can't handle the bandwidth that's necessary for today's communications. So I would hate to see the county look at wireless as a long-term permanent solution, because it won't be. But in a short-term solution to fill in gaps when affordability is still, again, as far as the economics of doing it. Yeah, I think it should be on the table. You can have a fiber backbone running down, major county roads, and how many silos do they go by, for instance, where you put a wireless antenna up on there and you might be able to hit an extra 5 or 10 people with a particular point of presence there, but with wireless. But we have to keep in mind too, and I speak more from East Elgin because I know it's a little bit different geography than some of West Elgin and Central Elgin, but East Elgin, Malahide and Bayham are not friendly places to do wireless. It's heavily treed. There's gullies galore. Beautiful, mind you, most beautiful part of the county for those of you that are outside of it. But it's a huge, huge challenge in East Elgin wireless because you have to have line of sight. No wireless technology, with the exception of satellite, which is extremely expensive, as Al alluded to, and it also isn't all that robust. But it's got to be line of sight, and that's darn tough to get in Bayham and Malahide and parts of the rest of the county for sure along the lake shore. But anyway, I again, to reiterate, I think it should be on the table absolutely as a short-term part of a long-term plan, if you will, or a component of a long-term plan.
I want to agree completely with Mike there that wireless is definitely a stopgap measure, but it is very quick to deploy. We used it a lot around St. Thomas. The furthest we went out was Union and the airport. But for areas that needed connectivity quickly, even customers in St. Thomas, we would quickly throw up a wireless connection for them while it took the time to build out fiber to them. And it was very successful for us.
Jim, did you want to say something?
Case of the county, though, when we're talking about trying to reach all of the residents, I don't think that we're going to be able to do that through wireless in short order. If Councillor Giguere by bandage means that we need to provide solutions during the pandemic, my guess is with wireless, we'll be able to help some people, but not the vast majority. So I think we need to, if we're looking for bandage solutions, we'll need to really have three phases: the bandage, the intermediate solution, which would be wireless, and the long term, which would be fiber. And in that bandage solution, I think what we have to do is look at communicating where we have access points and providing people with how do you, as an example, where we have access points that we're providing through the libraries, but to the extent that libraries were shut down, how do we get people in the building? And I mean, that's starting to happen now, but we'll need to look at how do we do that and how do we maximize the use of those resources that we have where we can get people into the access points that we currently have in place immediately.
If I can respond to that, certainly when I'm thinking bandage, I'm not thinking of what we currently have in place. It's not working for everybody. And when I say everybody, I also don't mean that the very short-term solution needs to respond to everybody. I think if we could have a process of people raising their hand saying, I need help. I'm aware of a few cases where people have specifically approached council and said, I need help. Here's my situation. I've tried everything I can. Help. And that's what I'm thinking about, because I appreciate, don't get me wrong, all the library access points and different venues. It is closing one gap, but I'm looking to be creative and perhaps where Cecil is going in terms of this sort of bandage solution that ends up being a solution for something else, but provides that bridge. So I just want to be careful about that midterm. So even when I hear midterm, I feel that we're not responsive and acting enough. And that's what not everybody across the county, but we need to find out exactly where those pockets are. And I would like something short term.
Well, as an example, and I think Sean might have mentioned this at one point, or if it wasn't in this meeting, it was during a previous conversation. Obviously, getting a connection from, let's say, Elmer, for example, to a southeast part of Malahide is going to be expensive, timely, and costly. But 2 towers, line of sight, you can put up a nice high-speed radio. Yes, it's not perfect, but you can at least get the fiber deployed in that small neighborhood or that small community until such time as that fiber gets built up there. So the branches can be built, trunk's just going to come after the fact, which I know doesn't really work when you're trying to grow a tree, but I think for me the analogy stands is that you can at least get the community built up until the trunk gets there. And then if that tower can be repurposed for something, like, again, as a backup, great. Third-party WISP, it doesn't matter, but at least you're not waiting until the trunk gets there and then grow the branches. You can at least provide the connection and start building, the network as it is.
So let me ask this. If short-term sort of emergency solutions are on the table, how as a committee would you want to proceed to identify those? Like, what would we put in your action plan? How would you actually identify what that short-term solution would be? Would it be a discussion? Do you need some information or data to help you with it? What do you need to actually help you identify a potential or potential short-term solutions?
I guess we'd have to identify where the problem areas are. Like at the city of St. Thomas, their water tower, the north end, has become obsolete, and they're talking about knocking it down. To me, that's a perfect place to put some antennas on. But you have to have the people connect to before it starts. If no one's aware that it may be possible to use it, and there's a fair number of houses in that area, would that be a benefit? So, I don't know what areas of the county really lack service and what areas don't. But if we found out the troubled areas and look at possible solutions. That's my approach anyway.
Other ideas? Anything that would help you identify some short-term solutions, emergency solutions?
I think we have to do the survey and find out where the greatest needs really are, and basically just triage it, find the most desperate areas and see if there's a way to target those first.
So do the survey, sort of see what's going on, which is sort of what Tom said about problem areas, and then look at what are the potential solutions. So it sounds like if we're looking at your work plan, the end user survey is probably one of the critical pieces that you'd need, as well as probably gathering some of that existing data around what's going on from some people who are organizations that already have some data. People agree? Would that help you then look at some potential emergency or short-term solutions? Joshua.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that when it comes to point-to-point wireless stuff, there's a lot out there that are pretty much vast advanced in wireless, because we managed to use it to hotels which have like 600 guests, and they're able to use point-to-point wireless internet accessibility, which I truly believe that should be able to be a short-term solution, even as we wait for the fiber, but it actually works very, very, very well.
Great. So let me go back to the question I asked before we talked about the short-term emergency sort of response or solutions. Is there anything else we need to collect or other people you need to talk to that will help you develop your plan at the end of the day around enhancing connectivity? Have I pulled everything out of your head so far? Let me tell you what I'm going to do, just so it gets. This won't be the end of the conversation, but what I'm going to suggest is we actually pull it together into a document so you can look at it. If you're a visual person, take a look at it and say, yes, that makes sense, or oh my gosh, let's add in this, or maybe let's add in another question for this group. But as I said, we'll sort of say these are the action steps, especially around stakeholder engagement. We'll talk about the questions or the information you want to gather from your stakeholders, the methods of how we'll do it. So sort of lay out a draft action plan or work plan for you, and then get you to take a look at it to see if we've missed anything or you want to build in anything else. Because really what you want in your work plan is you want to gather enough information so that you can develop a plan around possible solutions. So what would you need to know to actually help you develop that plan? That's what your work plan is going to take you to. So at the very end of your work plan, you're going to develop the plan with possible solutions around enhanced connectivity. So that's where you're headed. Are there any other comments, questions, thoughts around the work plan? No. So maybe I'll look at Julie for a minute. I'm looking at Tom. Hello, Julie. You look so far away at the end of the table. So does the group have another meeting, or where are we at in terms of next steps then, if we provide them with a draft work plan to take a look at?
I don't believe we've set up another meeting. So we'd have to do that today to look at a draft plan. Could certainly, as far as administrative support that we're offering to the committee, we'd be happy to be as flexible as possible, knowing that everyone around the table is very busy. So if we could even narrow it down to whether that meeting is in 2 weeks' time, is that reasonable for committee members?
Yep, that'd be October 8th.
Okay. So the week of October 8th, is there, does Wednesdays or Thursdays work for committee members? Thursdays at 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Schedule in a couple hours.
Sorry?
Couple hours.
I would say so.
As part of that, do we want to have Swift do a presentation? Would that be a good step for the next meeting?
If possible, we could certainly try to arrange that.
I think Barry would have a lot of influence on where we're going. He's got more information than we do.
We can ask.
Yeah, I mean, the more we can advance the data collection, and if there are others who are available, we could look at the whole list of partners, and the ones that we already agreed we need to speak to, I think could almost be invited already. But I don't know how much we can cram in a couple hours.
Could I ask a question? We have fiber into Elgin Manor. And the school, Southwold School, is right across the road. Do they share it, or do they connect in any way, or, and if not, why not? And then the neighbors, are they included? What do they have for coverage?
I can answer part of that question. The fiber in Southwold School is actually a Bell fiber, and it's a dedicated service, which means it runs directly from their central office into that school, so it's not shared by anyone. I'm not sure Elgin Manor will be this. If Elgin Manor has fiber, which I wasn't aware what it did, but if it does, it'll be the same thing. The only commonality would be that it's in the same cable sheath, actually, but it would be dedicated services.
Could it be shared to the neighborhood?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Bell would say no.
Then the higher levels need to, if we describe it as an emergency and we're getting lack of cooperation, that's where I'm going to get annoyed. Because if Bell had, we go that.
There may be a, so there is fiber to Elgin Manor, to answer Mike's question. I believe it's a single strand, so I think there's technology limitations on whether or not you can just reset off and send it to somebody else's house. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. They're two really different service levels, and as much as I don't like to defend Bell, I will to this extent. There are places where Bell has fiber available, but I don't know what the bandwidth is going into Elgin, Al, but to do a residential play, you would have to have significantly more bandwidth than what Elgin Manor is getting today, and they may not have the infrastructure. Fiber is fiber. A single strand of fiber, you can pump 10 gigabit, you can probably pump 1 million gigabits across that strand of fiber, but the limitation is in the network behind the fiber. And there's a lot of places where we know Bell has fiber that you go and you can't get even a 1 gig connection, let alone a 10 gig connection, just because of the limitations of their network. So it's really two completely different service levels, but the fact that there's fiber there is suggest that it could be done. But again, with a Bell Canada, it's going to boil down to an economics case, which they won't be able to make their hurdle rate to make shareholders happy to do a residential play in that part of the county. But I don't want to speak for them, but that was kind of the response that you would get, I would expect.
Again, I'm just venting, but we've heard horror stories where the fiber is at the doorstep and you can't, Mayor Martin, it runs through Sparta and can't afford to put it into her house and $250,000 to run at 500. Why is that? Is that just lack of cooperation, or is that, because I find it so unbelievable?
Yeah, sometimes it is. If you're dealing with them as a third-party supplier, it quite often looks like anti-competitiveness, which I think sometimes it is. But it's extremely expensive. Those numbers I gave you a few minutes ago, $90,000 a kilometer to put fiber in the ground, and that's not Bell's number. That's a contractor's number to put that in the ground. So that's the kind of dollars that Bell would have to pay the contractor, and obviously they have to make money off the end of that. So it's huge capital investment. It's not something for the rural densities are a huge problem, and unless there's significant subsidy from third-party government levels of all three tiers or wherever, it's not going to happen in the short term.
Next steps, Jennifer?
So we'll draft up the work plan. We'll send it out to you to take a peek at before the meeting. So I'd suggest maybe the first part of the next meeting, you do a walkthrough of the work plan just to see if there's anything else you want to add in. I've heard potentially if you could identify a few organizations or companies that could come to your next meeting and do some initial chatting with you, that may be a good first step as well. And the staff, I think Julie already mentioned a number of things where the staff can already start in terms of that data gathering piece. So I think those are steps that could probably already get started and get you on your way. But I would suggest just taking another look at the plan to make sure you're getting what you're needing. And you can always continue to go back and look at it every meeting to make sure in case you want to add in some further pieces to it.
Okay, I want to thank everyone. There's a sense of excitement here and opportunity. So my dad always said the hardest part of any job is starting it. We have started it. So I feel really good about that. So I want to thank everyone and really looking forward to this. So before we close, is there anyone want to comment further? All right. We'll call adjournment and I'll look forward to the next meeting. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everybody.
We should move to it. Right?
Yes, we need someone move for adjournment. Moved by Dave.
I'll second that.
Okay. Call the vote, please.
Councillor Marks,
Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Giguere,
Yes.
Sean Southern,
Yes.
Joshua Curia,
Yes.
Mike Andrews,
Yes.
Warden Mennel.
Yes.
6-0, the motion is carried.
Good. Thanks, everybody.